free, simple way that you can do just that is by hitting the subscribe button. And my commitment to you is if you do that, I'll do everything in my power, the Almighty, to make sure that this show is better for you every single week. You'll listen to your feedback, we'll find the guests that you want me to speak to, and we'll continue to do what we do. Thank you so much. Dr. Georgia Eid, how do you define what it is?
What we're told all the time is mysterious chemical imbalances that need to be addressed with medication. We now understand that the real drivers, the primary drivers of mental health conditions are inflammation in the brain, something called oxidative stress, which is why we're always told to eat more antioxidants, and insulin resistance or diabetes, which is now affects more than 90% of Americans.
In your work, you talk a lot about ketogenic diet. Why is that so prevalent in your work?
Because the ketogenic diet energizes the brain differently, so it fundamentally changes the diabetes research until I figured out what I wanted to do, and I decided that I wanted to go to medical school. So then 4 years of medical school at the University of Vermont, I went to Vermont, which is a great place to go to medical school, and then 4 years of psychiatry residency training at a Harvard program called Cambridge Hospital in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And then, so it was 25 years ago that I finished my psychiatry residency training, and I've been practicing psychiatry ever since.
What does practicing psychiatry involve?
What it usually involves for most psychiatrists is psychotherapy and medications. And for some
Component to mental illnesses as well, right?
absolutely. I mean, the brain is a very responsive organ, and it's listening to, it's not just paying attention to food you eat, it's paying attention to every aspect of your life, how much light the brain receives, how much love you have in your life, how much you love your work, what kinds of people are around you, how you use your body, exercise, stress, everything matters to the brain. But most people are led to believe that food doesn't matter that much to the brain, and that's partly because we've only recently started to think about it. But the other piece is that
Prominent case study or a first case study that was a eureka moment for you.
I wouldn't say there was a eureka moment case in my life because I came to it in a different way. My eureka moment really came through my own personal experience. I think a lot of physicians who practice nutritional and metabolic strategies, most of us stumble into this work accidentally because we're not taught it. And most of us stumble into it either because a patient comes to us and says, hey, they did all kinds of tests, and they said everything is normal, there's nothing wrong. Of course there's nothing wrong. But so I instinctively started experimenting with my diet. And long story short, 6 months later, trial and error changes, food and symptom journal. At the end of 6 months, this was back in 2007, the diet that I ended up on, purely by trial and error, was almost upside down and backwards from what we're told is healthy for us. And that was the diet that resolved every single one. And it's a lot of what I share in the book is all these fascinating things about food that most people don't know. And that can really, it's not just that it's interesting, it's useful. It's empowering because if you understand which foods contain the nutrients the brain needs, which foods contain the ingredients that damage the brain, which foods are going to damage brain metabolism and cause inflammation and cause oxidative stress, cause all these things that we're told we need to fight with supplements and superfoods. That's the real power. The real power in dietary change is not adding special things to the diet. It's actually subtracting the things that are harming the brain and working against your best efforts. And the rules that you have to follow to get there are not commonly known. But then beyond that, there's the personalization, right? Because we are all different. We're not different in what our cells need, but we're different in what we can tolerate. We're different in our metabolic health. We're different in how old we are, how active we are, what conditions we already have, what conditions we're most at risk for, what our goals are, what our preferences are, and whether we have food sensitivities, for example. And so all of those pieces dies your brain cells. But if you have significant metabolic damage, if you're sedentary, if you're older, if you have pre-diabetes or type 2 diabetes, then you may need to reduce the amount of carbohydrate in your diet, even from whole foods. You may even need to go to a ketogenic level. And that's where assessing your metabolic health, understanding where you stand on the insulin resistance spectrum, the spectrum of metabolic health, that's the empowering piece. Because if you know where you stand on the insulin resistance spectrum and you can get your glucose and insulin levels into a healthy range, then you have tremendous power. So a lot of people think, or they've heard about a ketogenic diet as a weight loss diet. They think of it, maybe it's a bad weight loss diet. If they think of it as a very, very low carbohydrate diet, they might think that it's a diet that's very high in meat and dairy products. But actually, the ketogenic diet was originally created in 1921, more than 100 years ago, to stabilize brain chemistry in children with severe seizures. This was long before the availability of useful seizure medications. So these were children who were having multiple seizures per day in many cases. And so the ketogenic diet was designed back then, created back then, a very strict version of the ketogenic diet, to get as close as possible to fasting without starving children to death. Because for millennia, people had noticed that those with epilepsy would often improve if they were fasting. But you can't fast forever. So how do you get close to fasting? This is the original fasting mimicking diet. How do you get as close to develop cardiovascular disease? I might develop depression. I might develop ADHD. And that's where the individual differences are. But all of these conditions are just metabolic malfunction, really, at the heart of it. That's what's going on. If cells aren't functioning properly, you will develop a disease, physical and mental diseases. And which ones you get, it's really kind of luck of the draw. You have tremendous control over what you are at risk for if you understand how to help your cells operate at their personal best.
Can you tell me about what you learned in this study and what this study concluded?
Yes. So this was the work of my friend and colleague, Dr. Albert Denon. He's a psychiatrist who's been practicing in Toulouse, France for more than 35 years. So after witnessing a young family member, someone in his extended family with autism and seizures improve within weeks of adopting a ketogenic diet, he thought, well, I wonder if this diet could help my patients, especially my patients who are not responding to anything else that I have tried to help them. Psychotherapy, medications, hospitalization. And so he invited 31 of his most treatment-resistant patients with bipolar disorder, major depression, or schizophrenia to come into the hospital and voluntarily try a very mildly ketogenic whole foods diet in the hospital under his supervision to see whether or not they would respond. And these were folks who, these are all adults, these were people with psychiatric supervision, which is also really important because when you change to a ketogenic diet, brain chemistry fundamentally changes in ways that can at first, when you're transitioning from one operating mode to another operating mode, it's stressful, and sometimes you can feel worse before you feel better. And medications can be effective. So medications need to be monitored. And everything changes. These are all really healthy changes. Your blood sugar can drop. Your blood pressure can drop. Especially if you're taking blood sugar lowering medications or blood pressure lowering medications. If you switch to a ketogenic diet, it's so effective at lowering blood sugar. Many physicians who prescribe blood sugar lowering medications for diabetes need to cut the diabetes medication in half on day one in order to prevent dangerously low blood sugar. Because you've got a medication that's lowering blood sugar, now you've added a diet that lowers blood sugar, and this could be potentially dangerous. The diet on its own is is not dangerous. It's the diet in combination with medications. So you need to know what you're doing. And so, yes?
In the case of these 31 adults, so a certain proportion of them, was it 28 that managed to see
20 to 31.
28 scored through. Had I just restricted their calories, for example, but kept them on whatever diet they were on, would I have seen an improvement as well?
That study's not been done, to the best of my knowledge. However, you're bringing up a really interesting point. So what a ketogenic diet is, it's really not about carbohydrate values below 750 for the rest of your life. But you can safely and comfortably eat a well-formulated ketogenic diet, which is very low in carbohydrate, moderate in protein, not excessive in protein, and relatively higher in fat, depending on your energy needs, indefinitely.
Sustainably, use the word sustainably. That's kind of always been my challenge with the keto diet, is being able to stay on it. I mean, you saw in this particular study that even trying to get people to do it for 2 weeks resulted in some portion of them dropping out.
Yes.
Why is it so hard to stay on the ketogenic diet? I've managed to do it for, I was saying to you before we started recording, once a year, around this time of year, I do it for about 8 weeks, and it has a pretty profound impact on a lot of my life. It helps me feel more focused. My body composition radically changes faster than any other diet or thing that I've ever tried, faster than just exercise alone. I sleep a little bit better as well, I noticed. But you've been doing it for a long time. You've been doing it for roughly almost 10 years.
For the better part of 12, I mean, more often than I'll say, I've been on the ketogenic diet for 12 years, and I agree with you, it's not always easy. I'm not perfect about it myself, but I've been on the ketogenic diet for the lion's share of the last 12 years.
It being hard is an important factor.
Yes.
Because when you try to prescribe it to somebody who has got, treatment-resistant depression or is really suffering in some way, I imagine they'll find it even harder than I do.
Yes and no.
Okay.
So it's hard. Well, it's definitely, there's no question about it. It's hard to eat a low carbohydrate diet and a high carbohydrate.
The roller coaster seems to stop. I'm off the roller coaster. It's then maybe 6-8 weeks later, you're busy, life happens, you're traveling, you're tired. That temptation creeps in, and it just takes that one moment of weakness in my head to then fling me off ketosis, and all my effort is gone. And in my head, the way I've always thought about it, and I'm sure this is wrong, but I've thought about it like it takes a couple of days to get into a state of ketosis, and then once you're in, and I usually get a headache on my way into ketosis. I feel a little bit bad on the way in, and then once I'm in there, it's fine. So when I have something that breaks my keto, this is what I refer to my girlfriend as well, I've broken my keto, whatever. I think, oh my god, I'll go through another headache and another 5 days of, getting back into it. What is that correct?
It's a very... So, what are your goals for joining the club?
I guess learn the best way to work out and be stronger.
Is there anything else?
I don't think so.
Great. Let's get started.
Sure.
Treat yourself to Hungry Jack's delicious ice drinks. Award-winning, velvety smooth barista coffee over ice, topped with indulgent rich cream. Perfect any time of day. Now at Hungry Jack's.
It's a very common experience because there are these adjustments that happen inside with your physiology as you're shifting from one operating system to another. When you're shifting from carbohydrate burning system to a more, you're shifting your ratio of your fuels. So the body and the brain are hybrid engines, so we're never burning 100% fat. We're burning a mixture of fat and carbohydrate. When you're shifting from a system that
In a keto diet, because most diets are restricted to the point that people think they just make your life miserable. But what are the sort of big misconceptions you've seen with the foods you're able to eat on a ketogenic diet?
Yeah, so because a ketogenic diet, because the definition of a ketogenic diet is any way of eating that lowers insulin levels enough to turn on fat burning and generate ketones in the blood, because it's about insulin, it's really not a food list. So it's not about plants and animals, it's not even about fat or carbohydrate, it's about understanding how to lower your insulin levels, which you can do with a vegan dietary pattern, with a vegetarian dietary pattern, with an omnivore dietary pattern, or even with a carnivore dietary pattern. So whatever your dietary preferences are, you can get the benefits, the brain healing benefits. The second thing is your insulin levels have to come down. The third thing is you have to burn off a certain amount of stored starch in your liver. We have a storage tank for carbohydrate in our liver. It's not very big. It holds less than a day's worth of carbohydrate because really as animals we're designed to store energy as fat. Carbohydrates there for quick energy, emergency, short term. The fat, for better or for worse, we have almost an unlimited capability to store fat. We can store months and months and months worth of fat. And so we can only store a very small amount of carbohydrate. So if your storage tank in the liver is full of ketosis, and when you get above 0.5, a lot of metabolic magic starts to happen because there are lots of pathways in the body and brain that are not very active unless you're in ketosis, and those are the healing pathways, the recycling and maintenance and cleanup pathways, the recovery pathways. All of us, this is something that I came to appreciate a number of years ago as I've been studying this, is that there are many people, unfortunately or fortunately, there are many people who discover with mental health issues that they need to be in ketosis long term in order to be well. But I've become convinced by the science that all of us need to be, and how often. So, for example, it's known that in children who are eating a regular diet, many of them wake up the next morning in ketosis. They're metabolically much healthier than we are as we get older. So they're much more metabolically flexible. So now they didn't go on a ketogenic diet. They were eating a regular diet. They slept overnight, didn't eat anything. The next morning they were in ketosis. That's not true for all children, but it's true for enough children that we know it's possible. Most adults, it takes them several days at least to get into ketosis, even if they're not eating anything at all. So fasting can take 2 to 3 days at a minimum for most people to get into ketosis, but some people it can take a whole week.
And you talked about children there. One of the big conversations at the moment around children is the rise in ADHD diagnosis. And there's a lot of different sort of thoughts on the benefits in a subset of children, particularly those with food sensitivities or allergies, found that these benefits are not substantial enough to advocate widespread dietary changes in ADHD management.
So what I would say to that is there are multiple studies all pointing in the same direction that I think give parents and families and children tremendous hope with really no risk. What are we doing instead? We're medicating children. We're giving children stimulants, which can stop their growth, make them anxious, and cause money. And I'm one of the reasons I do this work is because I really don't think that for most people the right thing to do is to medicate our way out of this situation. I mean, just about every mental and physical health issue we have, we've just kind of been conditioned to think about medications as the solution. But medications don't solve problems, they cover them up. And we really want to get to the root of these problems and not just